What do you think about weddings in Nigeria? For instance, if you live in Western Nigeria, say Lagos, for instance, you have white wedding, you have what they call introduction, and then you have I think that's about the traditional wedding for some people. Then you have court wedding. So an average Nigerian guy gets married 3 times, minimally, minimum of 3 times. Some of them try to force themselves to go to Ikoyi for whatever reasons, for economic reasons, I guess. And the one that really gets my juice flowing, or that works me up, is what we call white wedding. I think this applies a lot to people who like to group themselves as Christians. But the Muslims also have something I don't remember what they call it. Is it Nikah or something? It's also their religious wedding. So basically what I'm talking about today is the role of religion and tradition in the way we live our lives. But funnily, or in a funny way, a lot of Nigerians don't even know that all these things that we do is just a waste of time and resources. Especially for the religious folks. For the Christians, they think that until you do the white wedding, you're not married, even though there's nothing like that in the Bible or the scriptures that the Christians hold to say that there's such a thing called white wedding. And what amazes me is that we call it by the name that it is, but we're not even thinking about it. Because once religion kicks in, an average man doesn't think. He may be a professor of law, a professor in anything, a PhD holder. When you introduce religion, they just stop thinking. They just stop using their brains. Nobody thinks again, because so it seems as though we think that God doesn't want us to think. And religion does that. Religion stifles progress. Religion is a tool for control and manipulation. Religion everywhere. It doesn't matter whose name they call, whether it is Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, whatever it is. And this is, I mean no offense to anybody. I'm not trying to accuse anybody of anything. Religion is all the same all across the world. It doesn't matter what name or what sign they hold dear. Okay, so let's get back to weddings. Traditional wedding, what we call traditional wedding, which is maybe our cultural wedding, and then what some people call white wedding, or what the Muslims call their own religious Islamic wedding. What is funny to me is that we don't even realize what we're doing. Again, for the Muslims, the wedding that they hold, that perhaps they consider maybe spiritual, is Islamic wedding. And it has to do with Arabic culture. You understand? Whereas for the Christians, the one that they call the white wedding has to do with European culture. So we are correct to call it white wedding, even though some people we then call it Christian wedding. So you see situation whereby people are married by our traditional rites, and maybe they do the traditional, what we call traditional wedding, and they wait for another 3 months before the white wedding is scheduled, and then the wife is not staying with the husband. So I remember many years ago as a young man, in thinking about these things, I used to say that will never happen to me. Yeah, but I said that will never happen to me. If I do the traditional rites on a particular day, my wife would go home with me, because I know that in the eyes of God, we are very married. You get? So, of course, what happened to me, I had my traditional wedding ceremony on a Friday. Of course, you know how it runs. It ran into the evening and all that. And then I also just raised it to my wife. Let's go home. You are now my wife. And of course, she didn't want to go home because she wanted to dress from her father's house. Because we had also what you call the white wedding, the church wedding. But I made it known to my father-in-law before we got married that there's no such thing as what we call Christian marriage. My wife's father was a pastor. And I said, there's no such thing as what you call Christian marriage. And he wanted to really know what I meant by that. I said, what we call Christian marriage or white wedding or church wedding is actually European traditional wedding. So it's that traditional wedding ceremony. So we just waste time and resources, and we just celebrate our ignorance. I said, because it doesn't make, once we do this, when we do this traditional marriage on a particular day, for instance, in the eyes of God, we're married. Because God recognizes it completely. So I took him to the Bible. Then I said, like I always say to people, Abraham was not present for his son's wedding. Abraham's wife was not present. Even the son was not present for his wedding. Abraham sent his servant to go and marry for his son Isaac. So if we are to follow the Bible, can we just follow that pattern? Since we say we are following the Bible. So that was the tradition of their time, at that time that he lived in. And then that was what they did. You get? So thinking that, because there is no place in the Bible for what you call white wedding. There is no place for it. It's not a godly thing, quote and unquote. It's not the traditional wedding is also not an ungodly thing. I'm not saying, by saying it's not a godly thing, I do not mean that the white wedding is an ungodly thing. No, it's not a thing that God says this is how you must marry. You get it? There's nothing like that. God recognizes to a great extent our cultures and our tradition. So let's not be putting or allowing unnecessary, undue pressure on young people who want to get married. And then we spend a lot. I mean, if you have a lot of money to spend for that purpose and that's what you want to do, all well and good. Go ahead, buy the wedding gown for as much millions as you want to buy, white wedding gown for as much millions as you want to buy, and then use it once and then it's gone. That's fine. But in my mind and in my opinion, that was a waste of money. And I'm glad I married a woman who thought the same. She thought it was unnecessary. There's no need to do all that. We can put the money into some good use after we get married and all that, So she told her dad that before I came, but the dad was, oh, are you serious? Okay, let me talk to your man. And then he asked me the same thing, and I told him, and then he agreed. Such a gentleman. He agreed. Oh, that's really true. And he's a pastor, but all his life he had dreamt that he would walk his daughter down the aisle. That is not our practice. That's not an African practice. You get? So he agreed, and then he felt a little sad. So the wife called later and said he agreed though, but he feels a little disappointed. So if it doesn't cost you guys anything, if you not take away from your faith, I said, no, it means nothing. I just wanted to make that point known. So eventually we obliged him. We had the church wedding the next day after the traditional wedding on Friday. We get? But if there was, I had made up my mind initially that if there was any trouble about that, then that was it for me. It's traditional wedding that we're doing. If we're going to do it, let's just do it and do it well. And then I said to him that also it doesn't make sense to me that we go to church the next day to do the white wedding ceremony and somebody's asking who gives this bride to wed. And I said if anybody asked that, I would raise up my hand and say we are married. We married yesterday. We are just doing a ceremony according to Europe or to the Europeans. You get? So Nigerians or other Africans where this is a practice, let's not be xenocentric. And what that means is that let's not undervalue our culture. Let's not allow the ethnocentric sense of Europeans put us down and make us feel as though they are close to God or they are the ones that God has given the instructions as to how to live life. No, culture everywhere, every part of the world is different. Is both universal and both unique, and no one is evil or better than another. Especially where it doesn't involve destroying people's lives. You understand? So hey, if you want to get married, and I have friends who are followers of Jesus who have done just traditional marriage, and then some people who go to church will think, is anything wrong with them, or is she pregnant? So what if she's pregnant? You get? No, I'm not saying you can't get pregnant before you get married. I mean, if you are a follower of Jesus Christ, you do not want to do that. But just suffice it to say, or just know that having the traditional marriage, the African traditional marriage, whether you are from the west, the east, the north, or wherever it is, the south, it's enough. You are very married in the eyes of God. It is very, very scriptural. If for whatever reason you want your pastor to be there, assuming you are a church goer, then call your pastor to come for the traditional rites, and he will pray for you. You get? Your parents prayed for you, your elders, and whatever. I don't know how you do it in your culture. They pray for you. It suffices. It's enough. And then your pastor can be there also and your Christian brothers to celebrate with you. I guess for the Muslims it's the same, because I know that our brothers from the West that are Muslims, they our brothers from the West, they love party a lot. Yorubas know they take party play. So when they have their traditional wedding, they still go ahead, because I asked a Muslim friend of mine, they still go ahead. Some of them still have their Islamic. I'm like, what are we doing? Why have we allowed religion to so blind us that we have no value for ourselves? That's exactly what religion does. Religion keeps you going round and round on the merry-go-round, and you never get to the end. Religion keeps you in a state of perpetual bondage so that they can control you, promising you that if you do this, you will gain a certain thing in heaven. No, religion always promises you that when you die, you go to heaven. Let me give you a small shocker. God did not create heaven for you to come and stay there. Heaven is not the goal if you are a Christian. Jesus said, thy will be done on earth. And in fact, when Jesus was praying in John chapter 17, he said, I'm not praying that you take them out of this world, but that you keep them. Then Jesus said, the meek shall inherit the earth. So which heaven are you running to? You would visit, but heaven is not a place designed for you to stay. The earth was made for you to live here. Maybe not this earth eventually. That's another day's talk. But the earth eventually. Maybe not this one, but still the earth. You get? So hey, come marry in peace if it's traditional wedding you want to do. And our sisters, please do not allow the fantasy of Hollywood and whatever, maybe Korean and all those people, to make you drag your man and say, no, the wedding gown you would buy is 5 million or 10 million or 100 million, the type that Kim Kardashian used, the type that you saw or somewhere. No, you don't have to do all that. It's truly unwise, especially if you do not have the funds for all that. It's truly unwise. It's just a one-day event. You get? So spend your time, resources, and plan and do your traditional wedding ceremony and enjoy yourself. And then go home to your husband. If you must do the white one, it is white wedding. There's no such thing as Christian wedding or church wedding in the Bible. It is white wedding. Of course, white wedding is not in the Bible. Neither is our own traditional weddings in the Bible. But if you must do the white one, please do not break bank or run into debt. I know a few people who run into debt because of all those things. You get? Traditional wedding is enough. It is recognized in the eyes of God. From wherever you are, it is recognized in the eyes of God. It is traditional wedding that Europeans do, that they wear suits and then they wear white garments. It's traditional wedding. Or is it white gown? It's their traditional wedding. I've ever seen them, they'll finish that one. They'll not say, let's go and do the black wedding. Assuming they are white. Let's go and do the black wedding. Then they will now dress in Edo or Yoruba or Northern or Igbo regalia and break kola nuts and do all that. It's foolishness. It makes no sense. That's exactly what it is. Don't be offended. I'm just trying to lay the truths that help people. Have a good day. Peace.